Great. Good morning. Happy Friday. Welcome to the second day of the UW System Board of Regents meeting. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Regent Adams. Regent Atwell. Regent Bogus. Regent Brankus.
Here.
Thank you. Regent Cologne.
Here.
Regent Jones.
Here.
Regent Cruiser. Regent Manydeeds.
Here.
Regent Miller.
Here.
Regent Peterson.
Here.
Regent Prince.
Present.
Thank you. Regent Rye.
Here.
Regent Staton.
Here.
Regent Tyler.
Here.
Regent Underly. Here. Regent Wops.
Here.
Regent Walsh.
Yes, here.
And Regent Weatherly. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there board members who wish to declare any conflicts of interest regarding today's open session agenda? Seeing none, we will proceed. I will now call upon our colleague Regent Walks to present a report of the Capital Planning and Budget Committee.
Thank you, Madam President. Capital Budget and Committee met yesterday to consider 4 items. We commenced the meeting by approving 2 real estate items and 3 projects on the consent agenda. 2 all-agency products at Stevens Point and La Crosse, and 1 minor facilities renewal project at Madison. The committee reviewed and approved a request to lease 410 beds on behalf of UW-Eau Claire for student housing. The university has on-campus housing for 3,611 students, leaving a shortfall of around 789 beds. The university's existing lease has expired. Therefore, the Department of Administration issued an RFP for housing, and the only respondent to submit was Haymarket Concepts LLC. Next, the committee reviewed a request to permit construction of the Camp Randall Sports Center replacement project on behalf of UW-Madison. This $285 million project replaces the existing 1955 Camp Randall shell with a new indoor football practice facility and demolishes the McLean Athletic Facility and renovates lower level spaces in the stadium. Other work includes a new in-fall athletic performance and treatment space between the stadium and the new indoor practice facility. This proposed scope of work maximizes use of existing space, removes and replaces underutilized and obsolete facilities, reduces deferred maintenance, and assists in the campus's ability to nationally recruit and retain students. UW athletic facilities need to close the gap in training facilities available to remain competitive with peer institutions for new recruits and to retain current student athletes. A properly sized and functional indoor practice facility is a necessity for top-tier football programs, especially those in northern climates. On behalf of UW Stevens Point, the committee reviewed and approved a request to increase segregated fees for the construction of Champions Hall renovation and addition project. This board granted approval to allow the project to proceed to construction at the December 2023 meeting. Project constructs an addition to Champions Hall with modern spaces to meet program needs. Its design will encourage student interaction and reflect the university's Healthy Communities initiative, while also addressing the facility's deteriorating conditions. Due to the Department of Administration's change in the bond schedule from a 30-year bond to a 20-year bond, fees to support this project had to be revised. The proposed fee increase for this project is $24.68, bringing the total fee for the Champions Hall project to $299.64 per year. University and student government leadership have reaffirmed their support for this project. Associate Vice Chancellor for Facilities Planning and Management at UW-Madison, Cindy Torsmith, provided a presentation entitled Progress Through Challenges, Transforming the Built Environment. UW-Madison's built environment remains critical to its mission of research, education, and outreach, and is following a multi-pronged strategy to address aging facilities increasing deferred maintenance, and the quickly changing needs of its community. Senior Associate Vice President Alex Roll, she provided a status report on the 2025 through 31 capital budget submission. 248 projects were submitted, valued at $10.6 billion over the 6-year planning cycle. The largest number of projects are in the minor facilities renewal category, a sign that the need to repair, renovate, and modernize our facilities is a high priority. The capital planning team will commence visits to our 13 universities to gain more information and insight into each of the capital budget requests starting next week. Madam President, that concludes my report. Moreover, I move resolutions D1, D2, D3, D4, E, F, and G.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Regent Tyler. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much, Regent Walks. And next, reporting on the Audit Committee, Regent Miller.
Thank you, Regent President Walsh. The Audit Committee met yesterday morning. Chief Audit Executive Lori Stortz reviewed the progress to date on the fiscal year 2024 audit plan. She confirmed that her office is making excellent progress on the plan and expects to bring several more audit reports to the committee when we meet in April. Due to the impact to our universities caused by the FAFSA delays, her office was asked to defer the audit of third-party services, which will be deferred to early summer. Ms. Stortz then provided a high-level summary of the results of audits recently issued by the Office of Internal Audit since our last meeting in December 2023. This included the concussion protocols, the general ledger clearing account follow-up, the NCAA Athletics Division I agreed upon procedures engagement audits, the NCAA agreed upon procedure audit reports for the UW Green Bay and UW Milwaukee, and lastly, the payroll biennial audit for the April A 2023 and September B through September B 2023 pay periods. I urge the universities to ensure that their concussion protocols documentation is complete, timely, and on file. Next, Paige Smith, Chief Compliance and Risk Officer, presented an update to the Universities of Wisconsin Risk Compliance and Audit Program to the committee. We thanked her for piloting this program and the work that has been done. Ms. Smith followed up by presenting an update on youth protection and System Policy 625 compliance. She and the committee acknowledged former Director of Youth Protection and Compliance, Bernicia Clifton, for her positive contributions to the office. Associate Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer, Edward Murphy, gave an update on the cyber insurance policy renewal. The Regents commended Mr. Murphy, the Office of Information Security, university chancellors, and IT team for the work done to increase coverage and reduce costs. Their success in securing more coverage for a smaller fee is absolutely remarkable. And lastly, UW-Madison Director of Athletics, Chris McIntosh, presented the UW-Madison Annual Athletics Report, joined by a number of his colleagues. We congratulated them on the strong performance of their athlete programs, both financially and academically. The Regents thank the participants for their ongoing support. This concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Miller. I sat in on that meeting yesterday, and the reading of the academic achievements of the athletes was just stunning. Do you happen to remember the numbers, John?
I could dig it out, but they were, does anybody here remember?
Right, and grade
93?
point,
Yes.
grade point in graduation,
Yes.
so impressive.
Yes, congratulations to everybody at UW-Madison, spectacular.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Regent Miller. Now to Regent Rye for a report of the Business and Finance Committee.
Thank you, Regent President Walsh. The Business and Finance Committee acted on its agenda as follows. The committee first heard a presentation from our host campus entitled Investing in Innovations for the Public Good. Vice Chancellor Rob Kramer and Associate Vice Chancellor David Murphy provided an overview of UW-Madison's fiscal position and offered examples of how new revenues generated by the university are being strategically invested to promote their research, education, and service missions. Next, the committee approved 2 agreements that extended current relationships between UW-Madison's Department of Athletics and its retail partners for an additional 8 years each. First, Fanatics Retail Group Fulfillment will continue to operate the official online store buckyslockerroom.com. Terms of the agreement included an increased revenue share that is expected to net $3.75 million to UW-Madison. The second agreement is with Gold Country for operation of the brick and mortar stores within Camp Randall Stadium and the Kohl Center. Contract provisions included a $400,000 capital investment in the stores and an estimated $4.5 million in revenue to UW-Madison over its term. The committee then approved an agreement on behalf of UW Superior's Lake Superior Research Institute, which was awarded federal funding through the Great Lakes and Lake Champlain Invasive Species Program. With a combined budget of $2.2 million, UW Superior will work with its subgrantee, the Interlake Steamship Company, on projects that use their vessels to conduct research on the effectiveness of various ballast water filter solutions. Next, the committee approved the UW System Status Report on large or high-risk information technology projects. The report, provided by Chief Information Officer Stephen Hopper, details the status of 9 major IT projects across the system, including one new project to significantly increase the security posture at UW-Madison through the consolidation of Active Directory environments. Other project updates include the completion of Phase 1 of UW-Madison's access controls replacement and the continued expectation of the Administrative Transformation Project to go live in July of 2025. The total project portfolio is about $260 million, a 1.2% increase compared to the July 2023 report. The committee then approved the annual report on the strategic plans for major IT projects. The report provided an inventory of all ongoing and new projects, both enterprise-wide and institution-specific, and includes information on each project's business need, impact, staffing requirements, and budget. Both reports will be submitted to the Legislature's Joint Committee on Information Policy and Technology pursuant to state statute. Lastly, Vice President Sean Nelson provided an informational update on the engagement with Deloitte Consulting to conduct financial and operational reviews of 12 universities. Sean presented a project overview and timeline, noting the staggering engagements with the institutions are anticipated to continue into June, followed by an assessment of UW system administration to begin in July. In conclusion, on behalf of the Business and Finance Committee, I now move approval of resolutions E, F, G, H, and I.
Thank you, Regent Rye. Is there a second? Thank you, Regent Walks. Any questions or discussion for the committee? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the resolution passes. Thank you, Regent Rye. And now we'll call upon Regent Weatherly. He will present the report of the Education Committee.
Thank you, and I apologize for my tardiness. Yesterday, the Education Committee approved 4 degree programs, policies to review the undergrad application fee structure, heard a host presentation, and discussed the impact of generative AI. We approved a UW-Eau Claire Bachelor of Science Professional Studies, an international degree completion option for those looking to add skills and knowledge and complete their bachelor's degree, building on an associate's degree, or a significant number of credits, or students whose interests or circumstances have changed or served by completing a flexible degree. A UW-Madison Bachelor of Science in Design, Innovation, and Society, bridging a range of interdisciplinary approaches to problem solving through design. Students will elect pathways focused on the intersection between design and a sector of human behavior, namely culture, social change, and technology. U.S. job postings specifically seeking design thinking skills have increased by 153% in the last year. A UW Stevens Point Master in Social Work, 100% online degree program consists of 64 credits for students with undergrad degrees other than a BWS, or 33 credits for students entering with a BSW degree. Students may choose from a variety of pathways, and students completing the program will be eligible to apply for certification as advanced practice social workers. A UW-Whitewater Master of Science in Education in Reading Instruction and Dyslexia Intervention. This new MSE program, together with graduate programs in reading and special education for a single and comprehensive degree opportunity. Students will complete requirements to obtain the Wisconsin Reading Teacher and Wisconsin Reading Specialist license, while also completing the certificate in dyslexia and language-based learning disabilities, bringing highly qualified reading administrators and coaches into the Wisconsin public schools. Then we approved a modification of the undergrad application fee structure. This returns to a free application for all applications submitted to all UW universities except UW-Eau Claire, UW-La Crosse, and UW-Madison. A policy adopted last July to charge a fee at the other 10 UWs after 3 applications was based on a desire to reduce the number of students who apply to an excessive number of universities without real interest in attending most of them. While data showed that it was having an effect, a change was compelled by the desire to continue to promote student access, along with 2 initiatives that will alter the admission landscape and student behavior, specifically the recently introduced direct admissions program and expected guaranteed admissions legislation. Hosts from UW-Madison then shared the opportunities and impact of undergraduate research. Provost Charles Isbell, Professor Trina McMahon, and students Josh Bastian, Dominique Elena Gooden, and Sophia Schoenfeld demonstrated how students gain valuable research experience working directly with faculty, research, and staff experts to advance scientific understanding, contribute to scholarship in an array of fields, and address real-world challenges. The hosts also showed how UW-Madison is a leader in studying effective mentor and mentee relationships in research settings. Finally, we discussed the impact of generative AI on the education mission of the universities of Wisconsin. We all felt that the reverberations across higher education from the wide availability of ChatGPT and others beginning in the fall of 2022. UW-Madison's Provost Charles Isbell and Senior Vice President John Zuven, along with UW-Stout Provost Rodríguez, led a general overview of the developments of AI and a focused discussion how AI is transforming the work to support student success, career readiness, academic activity, and the craft of teaching. Regent President, this concludes my report. Therefore, I move adoption by the Board Resolution C1 through C5 and D.
Very good. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Questions or comments? I want to ask if everyone at the table here understands why we have made that change to the fee structure for application. Is there anybody who, because we just instituted that policy last July and now we're changing it. Does everybody understand? If you don't, raise your hand and we'll find somebody to explain. Okay, very good. Any other questions, comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much, Regent Weatherly. Over the last several years, the federal government has increasingly put significant funding into programs for which major research universities like UW-Madison can play an important role. Yesterday, we heard about the significant NIH dollars coming into UW-Madison, for example, for Alzheimer's research. More than just developing new technologies and spurring innovation, these new funding programs focus not just on academic and industry partnerships, but also expect outcomes related to job creation, regional economic transformation, community development, and equity considerations. Next on our agenda, our hosts have convened a panel today to discuss this further. To kick things off and introduce today's are you ready to introduce the panel, Chancellor Mnookin?
Yeah.
Or are they introducing themselves? Well, I see Charlie at the table. Charlie, you want to just?
I will panel, but I think I will do is Charlie Hoslet to introduce the panel.
Okay.
And to say, that they're here and I know you're going to be in for an interesting conversation.
Thank you. And all y'all at the chancellor's table, just beware, I could call on you at any time. So. Okay, thank you, Charlie. Take it away, please.
Thank you, Regent President Walsh. Good morning, everybody. Good Friday morning. And thanks for the opportunity to talk with you today about some of the new funding opportunities that are happening through the federal government and how UW-Madison and indeed the state of Wisconsin can take advantage of those. As Regent President Walsh and the Chancellor said, I'm Charlie Hoslett. I'm the Vice Chancellor for University Relations here at UW-Madison. You're well aware of the tremendous impact and the amount of research funding that is captured by this campus. We have a mix of federal funding, funding from industry, state and local governments, nonprofits, foundations such as WARF, and of course, the largest of those is federal funding, which last year brought in almost $1 billion to this campus. Some of that federal funding comes to us in public-private partnerships in research and development. Historically, this has revolved around university industry partnerships. A good example is the National Science Foundation's grant opportunities for academic liaison and industry program. That's a federal government program title if I've ever heard one, which seeks to stimulate collaboration between universities and industry in spaces where industry research participants provide critical research expertise and bring industry's perspective to the project. UW-Madison has received a number of these awards over the years. But as noted in a 2023 report by Brookings Metro, a new wave of federal place-based economic policies led by the Department of Commerce's Economic Development Administration and the National Science Foundation is seeking to create larger scale, longer term competitive challenge grants that bring together networks of institutions, including research universities like UW-Madison, around a targeted economic opportunity. The goal is to invest in public-private partnerships that, as Regent President Walsh mentioned, reach beyond simply developing new technologies or spurring innovation. Instead, the focus is on enabling regional technology development that addresses pressing national and societal challenges, cultivating partnerships across industry, academia, government, nonprofits, tribal communities, civil society, and communities of practice, promoting and stimulating economic growth and job creation that benefits all people, and spurring regional innovation and talent, especially in communities across the country, including historically underserved communities that have not fully participated in the technology boom of the past few decades. There have been a number of new programs from the federal government that the federal government has funded in the last several years that are geared toward accomplishing these goals. 3 examples that UW-Madison has competed for are the following: the Build Back Better Regional Challenge, a $1 billion grant competition created through the American Rescue Plan Act that challenged communities to identify a set of interconnected investments that together could transform their local economy, expand economic opportunity and competitiveness, and create thousands of good jobs. The NSF Engines program, with the potential NSF investment of nearly $1.6 billion over the next decade, is supporting multiple flourishing regional innovation ecosystems across the country, spurring economic growth in regions that have not historically been part of the technology boom. And the Regional Technology Hub program, which could receive as much as $10 billion over the next 5 years, aims to strengthen U.S. economic and national security with investments in regions across the country that have the assets and resources to become globally competitive in technologies and industries of the future. And as you heard yesterday, and no doubt know, Wisconsin received a designation as a biohealth tech hub with a goal of positioning our state as a global leader in personalized medicine. Joining me today are 4 leaders who have each spent a significant amount of time working in this space. Allow me a minute to introduce each. Dr. John Audia is Senior Associate Dean for Basic Research, Biotechnology, and Graduate Studies at our School of Medicine and Public Health, where he is responsible for the leadership and direct management of the areas of basic research, graduate studies, and industry relations. He is also a professor in the Department of Biomolecular Chemistry. John has been a part of the university's efforts around developing the idea for the BioHealth Tech Hub from the very beginning and currently serves on the Tech Hub Consortium board. Wendy Harris is the Regional Innovation Officer for the Wisconsin BioHealth Tech Hub, which is part of BioForward Wisconsin, where she leads a consortium of 15 member companies and over 30 supporting entities. She is also a seasoned executive with a remarkable 33-year career at GE Healthcare, marked by her leadership and expertise in various aspects of the medtech field. Chris Cozina is our Assistant Vice Chancellor for Industry Engagement. I almost gave you a promotion there, Chris. He leads cross-campus industry engagement efforts and serves as Senior Advisor to campus leadership. In addition to overseeing our Office of Business Engagement, Chris supports campus-wide economic development and public-private investment initiatives, helped lead the campus's applications for funding under the Build Back Better Act and NSF Engines initiative, and led the development of the Tech Hub proposal for the campus. And John Schnur is Chief Executive Officer of America Achieves, a nonprofit organization based in New York City that incubates and supports large-scale initiatives to advance economic opportunity, mobility, and pathways to good jobs and careers. John, a Madison native, I might note, also has prior experience in and deep connections with the senior levels of the federal government, and he and his team were critical in advising the university and the state as we created a Tech Hub proposal and pursued the designation that we received from the U.S. Department, the U.S. Economic Development Administration. I would like to note John and his team continue to work with Wendy and others as they prepare a phase 2 application, which is due at the end of this month. So we're going to ask John Schnur to start us off and talk about the recent growth and expansion of P3 opportunities being funded by the federal government. Following John, we'll hear from Chris, who will talk about the university's experiences with and lessons learned from our efforts in these areas. We'll then hear from Wendy, who will talk about the importance of these programs to industry, both from her experience as a GE healthcare executive, as well as from her current role working with a variety of companies in the Tech Hub Consortium. And John Audia will share his perspective on faculty interest and involvement in these new P3 opportunities, both from his role guiding the School of Medicine and Public Health's partnership and engagement with industry, as well as from his involvement in the BioHealth Tech Hub. And finally, I'll ask each of the panelists to briefly share their views on what it will take for the university and indeed the state to compete more effectively for these new public-private partnership opportunities going forward. And then, of course, we'll invite questions from the board. So John Schnur, please start us off.
Thank you so much to the Vice Chancellor, the Chancellor, President, the members of the Regents. I'm so honored to be with you all today. This is such an important moment, I think, in the country and Wisconsin, and the role that the university system, the university plays, I think is critical here, but also as an example for the country. As Charlie mentioned, I did grow up, I live out east, I grew up out here. Madison, my dad still lives, he's 85. He's still adjunct faculty at the law school here. I'm very proud. He just won the Teacher of the Year award at the law school last year at 84. So I'm a proud son. But grew up in, actually just outside Milwaukee, lived in Madison for a while, and just grateful for the opportunities that my family and I and the whole state have had because of the incredible asset of the university and university systems in this state. Very huge believer in the importance of this, and huge believer in the role that the university you are playing in this around the state can play moving forward, including for the federal funds that I'll get into right now. I think you are pivotal and will be pivotal in not only bringing funding to Wisconsin, but in continuing to advance economic opportunities and other opportunities for people across the state. So specifically, let me spend a few minutes telling you about the federal funding that has come into place over the last several years with bipartisan support from President Biden, Secretary Raimondo, whom we work with a lot at the Department of Commerce, and both Democrats and Republicans in Congress in an era of division and partisanship. This is an area where there actually is some common ground and some progress, even if it doesn't necessarily always get the public attention that it might. But as Charlie mentioned, the Vice Chancellor mentioned, the Brookings Institute published a report showing there are 19 federal programs in the past 3 years that have been created, providing $77 billion in new funding opportunities on a competitive basis for efforts across the country, which some people might call industrial policy or industrial strategy. The headline for the purpose of this, and I'll get into a few of the specifics briefly, is that I think there's a recognition in both parties that there is both a need to better leverage assets across the country, all across the country, business, research, universities, for competitiveness purposes, especially with kind of a lot of focus on the rise of China. But there's also an understanding and a recognition, I think in both parties, the different emphases in both, but around the geographic, the economic inequities and disparities across the country. And that if we have too much economic concentration just in a small number of places on the coast or in any state within a particular area, that is not only not leveraging our assets for competitiveness, but is on the road to real economic stratification and really sort of threats to democracy if people across the country and states don't see opportunity for themselves in every community. And there's a recognition that the economy has changed and is changing so dramatically that the recipe for local economic success is different from what it was several decades ago, even several years ago. So these programs are focused on specifically supporting local efforts that are dedicated to building on local assets to drive real economic transformation and opportunity in a particular place. Focusing on high growth sectors, building on some business foundations, crucially research, applied research foundations, but not just for one company or one project, but the notion is to support entire sectors that can become a better version of Silicon Valley, but in different sectors, from biohealth here in Wisconsin to advanced manufacturing in many places, to quantum computing, to other areas. And the idea is to have a set of partners, not just one institution, where the university, by the way, is an absolutely indispensable partner, but as part of a team. Universities, business, government, community groups in well-designed, well-implemented coalitions that have a look at how they align research, technology, business, equity, all in the pursuit of a successful economic sector. The first program that we were associated with, we've been working a lot with Secretary Raimondo at Commerce, and my team and I helped shape a few of these contests in Congress and administration. And the Build Back Better Regional Challenge was the first, the other one that came out that you all did apply for. And like everyone around the country scrambled to try to apply for, and most people weren't ready, I would say, for that. And you all did it, got an effort, learned from it. And then after that, something called the Regional Tech Hub effort came out, which you all, I think, based on the experience here at the Wisconsin-Madison, but also other places around the state, I have a role to play as well, really we're much readier for. And while you'll hear specifics around the tech hub, the biohealth hub, it's an example, I think, of how places around the country, including you all, are kind of getting more and more ready to participate in these partnerships that can drive success. I'll say one more thing before I close. I'm happy to obviously talk more later in the panel and answer questions, but we've been very involved in looking at applications around the country, supporting efforts. My team supported, and I supported 11 tech hub applications across the country in this last round, 7 of which got designated by President Biden and Secretary Raimondo as tech hubs, including the biohealth hub. And huge kudos again to the team and the partners that have come around that. And we've seen a lot about what qualifies, what essentially gets people to win versus lose in these. And I can go into a little bit more if there's time later. I would say just a few things about that really distinguish the winners from the losers, I would say, in the funding, but also then be able to drive the impact the funding enables. One is there's a very clear economic North Star, but here's the strategy for an economic sector that every project aligns to. And the coalitions that have lost, including some great ones that we've seen, have like a lot of individual projects where everyone's looking at what their project could be, but they're not saying, hey, what actually is the whole here? What's the actual, there's a bigger idea that we're aligning to. So having that North Star that everyone's project is like, yeah, we have to have our individual institutional interests, of course, that makes sense, but all aligned is kind of point one. Point two, it's a team sport, not an individual sport. So there's to be new types of collaborations and relationships that often take time to build to make sure this is really a team working together. And 3, it's kind of a Goldilocks thing where the federal government doesn't want to invest in things that would happen without the federal government, but they also want to be able to say, there's a real opportunity here. And the question is, but for this federal investment, X or Y would not have happened. And finally, there's a focus, certainly in this administration, on equity. And how do you have equity really be a driver of both expanded economic opportunity, but also leveraging talents from people from all backgrounds in order to drive success? And these may sound easy, but obviously they're not in practice. And again, I think salute what you all are doing on this, and happy to share more later in the panel about some thoughts about what you all can do to keep building on your progress to position yourself for federal funding in this opportunity. But thanks for the opportunity, and back to you, Chris.
All right. Good morning. And good morning. John, first of all, I want to thank John. John and his team have been instrumental in helping us here across the state, and your philanthropic support, your investors' support, helping us compete and learn has been deeply appreciated. For my part, what I'd like to do is relay a bit of the experience we've had at UW-Madison and working across the region, across the state, and how we've been learning and adapting, quite frankly. To John's point, this is new, but we're learning fast. There's probably 2 key takeaways that I would offer here today that we've reflected on, not only through our efforts and our learning by doing, but also benchmarking with winning institutions and winning regions across a couple of these competitive notice of funding opportunities. One is building capability. There's no question. We're seeking to build capabilities within and across our institutions across the state. If we seek to participate, but more importantly, if we seek to win some of these funding opportunities. And then two, really building collaboration and trust across institutions, across stakeholders. John named really the complexity that this environment creates, but also the opportunity that we have. Now, with those capabilities, what I'd like to do today is just highlight really just some very simple things, and they sound simple, that we've really learned through the process. Probably 4 key areas that we've had to raise our game and probably need to continue to do so. And again, they'll sound simple, but I'll try to bring them to life a bit. One is forecasting. We need to know what's coming to be able to actually go after these things. So getting in front of it before the NOFO hits. 2 is planning. Knowing where to play and how to win is very important. There's a lot of opportunity out there, but not every opportunity is for all of us, certainly not for UW-Madison, and really being adept at knowing where we need to commit resources, because we certainly don't have infinite resources. The third is really execution. These are heavy lifts, requires a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of energy. And we need to execute with excellence. We just can't be inefficient. And then finally is adapting. We're all learning. We're learning in the state, we're learning in the region, we're learning across the nation. And being able to adapt and make changes to our approaches is part of what we've learned. So really, when you summarize those, strength in all of these areas, which is what we're hoping to continue to build, really helps build really balance, I should say, the complex issues and the diversity of stakeholders and stakeholder inputs against pushing forward these ecosystems and pushing forward these ideas, right? One is easy to do. Doing both together is not so easy. Reflecting diverse stakeholder interests and continuing to drive progression and opportunity. So let me walk through a bit of the learnings we've had that have led to my statements around some of these capabilities that we're looking to continue to build through our experience from Build Back Better to NSF engines and then the regional tech hubs. Build Back Better, quite simply, through EDA, the Economic Development Administration, was really a challenge that provided investments to develop and strengthen regional industry clusters across the country, all while embracing equitable economic growth, to John's point, serving previously and historically underserved communities, creating jobs, and enhancing our competitiveness. Let me hit a couple of the capabilities to define sort of where we were in 2021 when we started. Forecasting. We didn't know it was coming. There was no forecast. We were probably 2 months into the competition in terms of the timeline of the NOFO before we even understood there was a NOFO, quite frankly. Now, pockets around the state were aware, but there really wasn't coordination or any depths of understanding of whether we would even compete on some of these new opportunities. We, like many across the nation and across the state, were in learning, but we didn't see it coming. From a planning perspective, really during the competitive NOFO period as well, we didn't know where we wanted to play. It could have involved any industry group, could have involved any geographic definition. And when you're learning, and even the NOFO itself was changing as we executed through this proposal phase. We didn't know where to focus, who to partner with. So it was a bit clumsy. There wasn't necessarily a coordinated response or effort across the state. We all tried, we were all learning, but we were also all competing in the state, quite frankly, competing with each other as well as with the rest of the nation. And in terms of execution, you can imagine, We didn't necessarily execute with excellence. We did our best. By the time we actually selected an area of focus, we had 5 weeks to go in a 4-month no-fill process. So that meant nights, weekends, everything we could possibly do. Help from people like John. The team was absolutely excellent in doing everything we could with the time that we were allotted. We didn't win, but we learned a lot and we applied our learnings to the work. Now, I will say some good news came out of it. That work, that learning by doing, led to a couple spin-outs that have come out of the university and university system now. So the entrepreneurial community is now starting to emerge in the area that we chose at the time. For us, we focused on fusion and fusion energy and the future of fusion. Now, lastly, in terms of adapting, we started learning sort of the hard way of how to maybe do this a little bit differently next time. So let's look at NSF engines then and fast forward to 2022. With engines, that really invited proposals to develop coalitions of academic institutions, nonprofits, workforce development agencies, government entities, and others to really create regional innovation ecosystems. But they were focused on technology sectors. John mentioned a few, from cybersecurity, AI and ML, climate change, the energy transition. There's a list of critical national security and national competitiveness focus areas that NSF has clearly articulated. But if you think about that list, there's a lot of hands that get raised to say, I can do that, I can do this, right? So there's quite a few in terms of opportunity. But again, if we all go after everything, the chances of really scaling and having that North Star, they're challenged. So we learned a bit. First of all, in forecasting, we did some things different. This time, we actually pursued learning and interactions with NSF ahead of the curve. We also pursued relationship building with statewide stakeholders to start understanding what we could all contribute and how we can complement each other. The other thing we did, which I think was a little bit unique, was we invited the TIP director, one of the senior executives from NSF, to come to campus. We didn't do this for the university. It was helpful for us, of course. Of course, we needed to learn, but we invited community stakeholders, we invited industry stakeholders, we invited other colleges, other institutions from across the state to really listen to what NSF had to say, and importantly, to start to show what Wisconsin was capable of and start to really articulate and demonstrate some of our successes and some of our opportunities for the future. So we started to market a little bit. In terms of planning, we held work sessions and discussion sessions across the campus. These sessions were also happening all across the state and our universities across the state, our economic development agencies and beyond. So we started to put a process in place to start to narrow and select. Importantly, we started to realize as well that cooperation was probably a little bit more important to be able to win anything at scale, anything that really mattered, than competing. Now, on the execution side, for UW-Madison, we changed our approach a little bit, and really credit is due to the faculty and the administration for looking at this opportunity a bit differently. We looked at strengths. We looked at the national strengths. We did some work around competitiveness, and we did much more partnering. So we partnered amongst the state, amongst other stakeholders, but we also went outside our borders, and we partnered with some other states that we could bring joint assets together to maybe build a bigger opportunity for the region in the Midwest. So we started to make some changes. Finally, I'll end with regional tech hubs. Regional tech hubs, the program itself really brings together diverse public, private, and academic partners. With our existing and really across the nation, the existing innovation assets as a foundation, these tech hubs really were intended and are intended to build workforces, to enable entrepreneurs and businesses to scale and grow, and to deploy and deliver critical and emerging technologies. Let me talk a little bit about some changes that we made from NSF and Build Back Better learnings now going into tech hubs. One, in terms of forecasting, we got in front of it. We knew it was coming. We started doing research ahead of the game. We started organizing across the state and learning from diverse perspectives. We started months, if not quite frankly, a year in advance. We didn't just engage here, we also engaged in DC. And we really started to prepare by reaching out from governmental to economic development agencies to colleges and schools across our state, regional colleges, community leaders, trade associations. We started learning and listening to each other. From a planning perspective, that important capability, since we knew it was now coming, we could start ramping up. We engaged with the State Economic Development Agency, and we were asked to lead a rapid process to down select, to start to create a North Star, to focus our energies in our efforts. We did so. We worked hard at it, and we delivered a consolidated set of inputs, really reflecting a very short list of potential strengths and areas that Wisconsin as a state could not only compete regionally, but could compete nationally and globally. So we started to articulate, here's where we can play and here's where we can win with stakeholder input across the board. We landed on biohealth as our focus area. And Wendy and John can tell us a bit more about how we really mobilized the teams and then executed with excellence. They all have the credit that's really due across the state for leading the successful proposal efforts and the hard work of many across the state. The net result of that work, though, we started posting wins. These teams realized wins in both the designation, which opens the door for future funding. We're now qualified for that. Many are not. We are now in the state of Wisconsin. And we received the initial planning grant as well, which starts to financially support our capacity and capability building. Not as a university or a system or any one business or any one community agency, but really as a team and a coalition of diverse stakeholders across the public and private sector. So with that, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Wendy and then to John to discuss the regional tech hub efforts and really the broader P3 efforts that we've gotten engaged in from both a business and a faculty perspective. Thank you.
Great. Hey, thanks, Chris. And thanks everyone for having me here today. So I get to tell you what we did right. So that's always a good position to be in, right? So we did win the phase 1 designation, and I'm here to represent industry, which I've done my entire career. I've been in the med tech industry. And then last year was appointed the Regional Innovation Officer for the BioHealth Tech Hub. So, we have very, very strong companies here in biohealth. You probably know this already, but between GE Healthcare, really the only US-based medical manufacturer of imaging equipment. Our competitors are all not in the United States, so that brings this national security piece to our Tech Hub application. We've got Exact Sciences. Obviously, you guys know Epic, Accuray, all of these companies that have presence here in Wisconsin. And after the phase 1 designation, which by the way, out of 192 applicants across the United States, we were one of 31 that was selected for phase 1. So just a phenomenal opportunity. And now in just a few short weeks, we get to be out of the 31, they'll select 10. And we really feel like we have a really, really good chance. And that's actually based on feedback from the EDA also. Our companies are very strong here. And quite honestly, one of the reasons that we were a winner in phase 1 was because of our industry representation. So, you're probably thinking like, why doesn't industry just get together and do these things? We're pretty busy in industry, making our own products and so forth. And one of the things that we learned is, by pulling it together, and I think these guys described it well in terms of how you bring teams together across different companies, across academic, which John is going to talk to you about in a minute. And actually, I got involved with this tech hub. It was even before the EDA came out with the phase 1 designation. So we've been working on this for, years. My role back in GE and with UW-Madison, we have a great partnership, which I think John's going to touch on a little bit more. But that was really some of the nexus of creating this start of this tech hub. So I remember last year, it was Valentine's Day, actually, we had a big meeting here, actually. One, I think down, just maybe it was right around here somewhere in one of these rooms. But we talked industry, UW-Madison, we had the College of Engineering there, so across the UW campus, and really talked about how we can bring this together between industry, academic, workforce, and pull together this kind of Madison, Milwaukee tech hub. And again, this was before the EDA came out with it. So we were well ahead of the game in terms of how we bring ourselves together to organize. And, you know, in industry, it's very easy for us within a company. We say, you bring a team together, you create your vision, you create your mission, right? You have these shared goals, you have SMART goals, and we just do that. And I think one of the reasons we were successful in phase one is we brought everyone together. First thing we said is, what problem are we trying to solve? So John made this point earlier in terms of make sure you have this like North Star problem. So when you get together with Exact Sciences and GE, what is the common problem we're trying to solve? And that's how we centered on personalized medicine. Very compelling. You need the genetic information that Exact Sciences has. You need the imaging information that GE produces. And this all comes together. So that's, I think, what we did right through phase one. We created that problem statement, shared goal, shared mission, and we're going to win phase two. So we're going to win the $70 million. I also want to mention that we've had very good support from the state. So goes to the floor, I think, on Tuesday next week. But the state is also coming through with some dollars, which we hope will help to fund this this tech hub. So with that, I'll pass it to John to talk maybe a little bit more detail, and then you guys can come back to me with questions. I'm happy to answer whatever questions you may have.
Thanks, Wendy, and thank you all for giving me the opportunity to share some of our recent efforts to really increase public-private partnerships here in the state of Wisconsin. It's really been my privilege to serve as Senior Associate Dean in the School of Medicine and Public Health for the past 2 years. It's been drinking from a fire hose, but during that time, my office has dramatically increased its engagement with industry partners. We've hosted a number of events on our campus, but we've also gone out into the community. We've visited these companies focused in the areas of biotechnology, pharmaceutical industry, data science, as well as manufacturing across the state. If I may, I'd like to specifically highlight a few collaborative efforts between our amazing faculty and private entities, some of which are very long-standing and others that are just getting underway. GE Healthcare, a leading global medical technology company just down the road in Waukesha, has been a strategic collaborator with UW-Madison for more than 40 years. A new 10-year agreement has recently expanded the existing scope of this relationship beyond medical imaging to new frontiers in digital technologies and disease-focused solutions. These efforts will drive improved diagnosis and disease management through the development of magnetic resonance imaging, computed tomography, ultrasound, interventional radiology, and molecular imaging modalities, as well as patient care solutions. Together with UW Health, the health system for the universities of Wisconsin, we now have the potential to advance artificial intelligence and digital solutions across the care continuum to enhance clinical workflows and the delivery of more precise, personalized care to patients. Over the past decade, UW-Madison and GE Healthcare have conducted more than 130 research studies collaboratively, including studies that have advanced new quantitative MRI approaches for early liver disease detection and management. This has been transformational and remarkable. UW-Madison is also the first U.S. research site for GE Healthcare's novel silicon-based photon counting CT prototype for enhanced imaging capabilities to help clinicians improve patient outcomes. This vital collaborative research and technology relationship has generated substantial health innovations, including more than 100 new patents, which have served as a major factor in our success as being recognized as one of 31 new technology hubs across the U.S. This could not have been accomplished without outstanding efforts from our faculty working hand in glove with our partners at GE Healthcare. Second, and a major new goal we have is to pioneer an innovative approach to leverage health data across the state through a Wisconsin Health Data Collaborative. This is one of several projects we are proposing in our Phase 2 Technology Hub application. This project will leverage artificial intelligence as well as machine learning, paired with enormous population level data sets to generate remarkable inferences based on a specific patient's biomarkers in mere seconds. One focus will be on disadvantaged communities that face unique obstacles, as individuals often refrain from seeking healthcare unless faced with an emergency. This health data collaborative will provide a highly secure but accessible platform for innovative research, personalized medicine, and population health initiatives. It will further create an open collaborative environment that encourages data sharing amongst healthcare institutions, researchers, and technology partners across the state of Wisconsin, and encourage collaborative entrepreneurship by facilitating partnerships between academia, industry, and healthcare providers to drive health innovations. Personalized medicine emphasizes preventative and proactive care, which reduces the load on our state's healthcare system. And researchers in our new Center for Human Genomics and Precision Medicine are eager to leverage this Wisconsin Health Data Collaborative to create novel diagnostics and therapeutics and improve the health span of our residents across the state. Finally, I'd like to highlight recent visits that we have made to Shine Technologies, a UW-Madison spinoff, as well as North Star Medical Radioisotopes, a key partner of ours, both of which aim to produce novel medical radioisotopes for diagnostic imaging procedures and targeted disease treatments, including cancer. I imagine, just looking around the room, that all of us have been touched by cancer in some form or another over the last several years. Unfortunately, my neighbor this past year was diagnosed with AML and had to go through really traumatizing treatment over the course of 7 months. Spending days with her in the hospital were eye-opening for me, and it really made me realize that we need to do better. This academic industry partnership supports a large and growing ecosystem of radiopharmaceutical production, an area in which Wisconsin stands out nationally as well as internationally. At UW-Madison, molecular targeted radionucleotide therapy, or TRT, offers the potential to overcome resistance that plagues cancer therapeutics by systematically delivering a therapeutic radionuclide payload selectively to both visible as well as occult tumor sites anywhere in the body following an intravenous injection. Combining imaging and radiotherapeutic versions of the same tumor-selective carrier molecule is now referred to as theranostics. UW-Madison is unsurpassed globally in its strength in targeted radionucleotide therapy agent discovery and development, as well as radiobiology, translational radiotherapy, medical physics, advanced imaging, image-guided dosimetry, and radioimmunotherapy applications. Over the past several years, we have brought in millions of dollars in federal grant funding related to theranostics, including the first and only NIH-supported program project grant on theranostics, as well as a brand new $8 million construction award to build a facility to expand our ability to create novel radionuclides here on the UW-Madison campus. We are now establishing a new Theranostics Institute in the School of Medicine and Public Health to discover and develop new and more effective cancer-targeted molecular imaging and radiotherapy agents and approaches to advance targeted radionuclide therapy applications. We also plan to develop advanced dosimetry procedures for optimizing patient selection and providing personalized theranostic treatment dosing to cancer patients. Ultimately, our goal is to be the preeminent site globally for preclinical and clinical theranostic research. I want to thank you very much for your time and attention. Our faculty are so proud to be part of the Universities of Wisconsin, and we want to help support the workforce development and training that's necessary to ensure that our private enterprise can continue to thrive across the state. Thank you.
Thank you to the panelists. What John just talked about is a classic example of the UW-Madison innovating for the public good, which of course is the theme of what we've talked about here. And there will be a quiz on everything he just talked about, so I hope you took notes. I want to leave plenty of time for the board to ask questions, but if I can just throw one out to get us started. And John Schnur started down this road a little bit. You know, these new programs are incredibly competitive. They're also the new normal. It's not just industry and university. It's industry and university and community and tribal governments and equity considerations and so forth. And I'd love any of the panelists who'd like to just take a minute and talk about what we can do better to be more competitive. And when I say we, it's the campus, it's the universities of Wisconsin, and it's the state more broadly. So, John, you want to start?
Happy to. I also want to highlight a little bit of a underscoring of the really exciting progress and success of the BioHealth Tech Hub that you've been hearing about. And it was one of only 31 Tech Hub designees from hundreds across the country. I think that it's tremendously competitive to get to the 10 bigger grants. And I'm hopeful it'll be competitive, and I'm hopeful. I think if it's a win, it's maybe, if not, the designees are now a focus of the federal government to look at. So there'll be other opportunities as well, but I'm very hopeful about a win here in the summer. But and I also would just underscore there are also given. Like, I'm a huge believer in not only higher education, but a system of higher education, and it can be an engine of economic prosperity, human capital across the state. I do think the BioHealth Hub is focused on statewide issues in very important ways, which I would just want to highlight, including there's a focus on healthcare statewide, including for underserved populations. There's a way of looking at manufacturing, how manufacturing across the state and across the state can feed into this. So while there's a Madison, Milwaukee kind of anchoring this, the federal government required there'd be 1 or 2 MSAs that were at the heart of this. There really is a statewide focus and leveraging in a way that I think is really important in the competition, but it also important for the state. In terms of your question on how you all can keep making progress to compete for what's going to be significant additional funding coming forward. Some of it's been acted, some hasn't been. I'll mention that briefly. There's 3 things I would focus on. Before I get to tactics, I think this federal policy agenda, the $77 billion, the 19 programs so far, more to come. We'll see, but there is an effort to have like a big, who knows, given the broader politics, but the majority leader in the Senate is working on a massive AI bill. The hope is to try to maybe in a lame duck session to finally to get done that potentially could have lots of funding on the AI front that will clearly include a significant focus on the kind of thing we're talking about. I saw the chancellor's announcement yesterday on the University of Wisconsin-Madison's effort on AI, which I think is a really significant, generally as a way of kind of getting ready, in my view, for the kind of looming federal competitions on that. So I think there are going to be opportunities to come that haven't been passed yet. And first, beyond the tactics, I think all these programs reflect the core aspiration for the role that universities can play. That is the same purpose that universities have played, including the University of Wisconsin system, but with some change. I think there's some change, not just tactically, programmatically, but I think institutionally, in order to position for these funds. And the 2 things I focus on institutionally, one is, which is a little less the focus today, but looking at higher education shifting, so supplementing the focus just on traditional age students to looking at learners across the board, given the changed economy, and how higher education can better serve learners from all backgrounds in order to equip them for success and good jobs. That is less focused today, but I do think that's a big emphasis that I think is going to be needed in order to help leverage learners from all backgrounds, including but not limited to the traditional age students. I know you all do some of that already. But the second thing is on the research front, to really go from leverage the research capacity to let universities can have that be really applied. And you're hearing examples today that link to regional economic efforts. And to do that, there are some tactical things, but there's a whole institutional question of how do you really ensure that the university across departments is collaborating across departments, that you're investing in strength and say, hey, you know what, we can't be the best at everything. You can invest across the board, but are there certain areas that can be best in class in the country? Are there certain policies? There are some real institutional, I think, questions that I think you all have already done work on, and I think you and others around the country can do more on, around how do you position the university to really play this role in applied research for solutions in a way that's different, I think, from the kind of just supplements the very important basic research, which is crucial so far. So there's institutional questions. Second, on tactics, these are very pragmatic. I think what you heard from just Chris describe and Wendy and John, there's been some quickly built capacity here. Some just team members who literally can get up every day and can work on this stuff. And I think one of the things that's hampered places around the country is when people have their day jobs in, academic departments and business and government, and then they try to do this work on top of that without there just being, again, it's very pragmatic, but small dedicated teams that are looking at to bring together that can actually help move an agenda like this. And I would say, looking at the University of Wisconsin-Madison's effort to build back the regional challenge, honestly, you didn't have that. There was no capacity built for that. So you scrambled, but everyone was scrambling. Now there's been some more capacity built. By the way, other universities have played a big role here too. In Build Back Better, University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point played a big role in helping the paper council and industry get a win and build a small win in the Build Back Better challenge, and got the governor put in significant state funding that they kept in even after they didn't win the large funding to really help revitalize the paper industry in environmentally friendly, sustainable ways in northern Wisconsin. That wouldn't have been possible without the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. But they were scrambling to get that application done. So just some dedicated, relatively small funding, in my view, can help leverage the much larger funding. And that's something which you've made some progress on, but I think that I would, recommend more. And then there are some very practical steps that you all are focused on. Some other places are, but the need to make it easier for research to be commercialized and for speed to actually respond kind of the pace of industry economic development is key. One of the barriers, I think, in many places around the country is that industry will say, gosh, we'd like to do this, but this is just too slow. And we need to figure out how actually the research can actually be commercialized more. And there's some practical policy issues that can help. I think everyone around the country is looking at how to accelerate that. And then lastly, I would say if there's one is an institutional question, how do you really make sure this is part of in my view, kind of a second, there's some tactical things like investing in small capacity, but leveraged capacity, and some policy issues around things like research commercialization, et cetera. The third is, I'd say a sense of purpose and mindset that you're seeing in pockets, but I think that if universities can embrace, or it's very important we do within our walls. I know this is part of the Wisconsin, idea, but say, how do we really deeply build a relationship, connect to, and work with outside partners, with community groups, with industry, with government, and have, and these are examples you're hearing about, but faculty and staff and leadership, really building those relationships and looking at how do we really work together to achieve this greater whole. One thing that Chris said I think is very important is the importance of forecasting and preparation. That instead of then just responding opportunity by opportunity that will come up, because there'll be others that will come up in the coming months and years that haven't even been enacted yet. But having that kind of mindset pervade an institution where you're really how we were working, so we are ahead of the game on this, including the way that the BioHealth Hub was. I think that kind of mindset and orientation is critical. So those are some thoughts on how to prepare.
I'll jump in here. Just from a practical perspective, you're sitting on just a wealth of knowledge from the research side, from, all the universities. I look at all the chancellors over there, just phenomenal opportunity here. And, as someone that came into this role, and I happen to also be a two-time graduate of here, and I sit on the College of Engineering board, but putting those pieces together, it was not easy, right? So if there's some way that you could help with these grants to put that together. So for example, we know the relationship, the research relationship we have with UW-Madison, but then you look around, you go like, wow, Milwaukee's great at making things, right? And UW-Stout has this manufacturing capacity, and, being able to put all that together, it was like piecemealing it, and I had to learn it all. And maybe there's probably already resources that do that here, but it's just a phenomenal piece that we have here. And if you can help these grant opportunities to put that together, that would be really impactful. And I would also mention that, one of the reasons we won phase one is because of our industry engagement, but also because we make things here in Wisconsin, right? So when we're competing against like Baltimore, yeah, they've got Johns Hopkins, they do all this AI stuff, but they don't make a lot of stuff there in Baltimore. So we have an advantage here to utilize the whole power of the university system and everything we do, from automation and AI and all of the different expertise we have in the different universities and quite honestly, in the different schools here, right? Whether it's CDIS, gotten them engaged, the College of Engineering. So really very powerful. So some way to structure that better. And I think John was kind of going down this path, but I'm just trying to make it more like specific examples of where if we can have someone that helps us make those connections and structure a team, that would be very, very helpful. So that's my suggestion for improvement.
Region President Walsh.
All right, questions, comments from Regents. Regent Rye.
Thank you all for your presentation today, and fabulous work. Maybe because of my healthcare background, I might be a little bit more engaged today. And I'm happy to take that quiz, Charlie. As a board though, one of the things that, of the many things we focus on, but one of the most important things we focus on is our students on our campus, and quantifying how this work translates into student opportunities is something that you may not be doing yet, but I would encourage as we continue to garner support for work like this is, yes, we can see the impact on the health of the state of Wisconsin. We can see the industry impact. But as a board, I think one of our important measures is what's the direct student impact? How many students had research opportunities because of this grant? And faculty impact's very important to us too. But the one thing I didn't hear quantified at all or mentioned was the true student impact. So if you can talk to that, or at least hopefully in the future, continue to measure that as you come back and show us the success of this project.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I'll let John jump in here too, but in terms of growth in the state of Wisconsin, some of the biohealth companies, since your healthcare background, Exact Sciences has grown more jobs than anyone. Epic employs more of your students than, most in most of the college towns, right? So it's really strong impact. And I think maybe we owe it to you to come back and say, when we get these types of grants and we start these new programs, right? So we talked about this oncology, John talked about the oncology data resource. How many students will that employ from not only from a research perspective, but internships, working with industries, new jobs coming out for them? Like, how does that increase their job opportunities? I think that's a good example. And that will be in our phase 2 proposal, because guess what? It's an EDA grant. So the one thing they care about is economic growth and then jobs, right? So that's clearly part of it, is creating jobs.
If I could offer to just maybe one additional point, I think it's a wonderful provocation for us to be thinking about and thinking more deeply about. We've seen a little bit of impact that I think is quite positive, but we need to do more on the entrepreneurial side. So when we see a spin out coming out of one of these campuses, when we see entrepreneurs that see the potential for investment capital and higher levels of business interest, we've already had a couple of these spin outs now that have set up graduate student relationships. And in fact, one of them on our Build Back Better initiative is now setting up internships around fusion energy for undergraduate students, which is fantastic, right? Because this is a wide open opportunity for us. So if you look at job creation in total, right, a lot of the job creation today comes from small businesses and startups versus large corporates. So the more we can do to create opportunities on that front, in addition to the more sort of structured roles that we have through corporates, I think the better and the healthier the region will be.
Yeah, I'll also add that, from an industry perspective, we know that we are very focused on, I'll talk about just engineering for a moment, but getting engineers from the state of Wisconsin, because we know that when we get engineers from the state of Wisconsin, they stay in the companies, right? So we want to keep them here in the state. And from a GE healthcare perspective, we know when we hire someone from University of California, one of their schools, they oftentimes don't stay here. So there's really a vested interest from industry to grow our apprenticeships, intern programs, and new hires out of Wisconsin. So very strong relationship, I think, with industry and all of the universities in the system.
So I think I'll answer in just a little bit of a different way. So nights and weekends, I'm also the director of our pharmacology graduate training program at UW-Madison. I host a laboratory with graduate students and undergraduate students. And what I can say is I sit in my office quite a bit. The students are the ones that are doing the research. The students are the ones that are making the discoveries, and we're providing guidance to our students. But really, it's their blood, sweat, and tears that are going into the new developments that we're able to then publish papers on and create those new partnerships with industry, with other academic partners. So I would say that this growth we have in technology, in public partnerships, this is going to really be encouraging for our students, because everyone wants, at the end of the day, a secure living, a good job. And now we can start to train students and express to them that we can train them to place them into companies around the state of Wisconsin or nationally. What we're doing, I think, is really building the capacity to allow more and more training to happen within our laboratories. And one piece of that is building the physical space itself to allow us to do that. So more and more, as I start to look at our space distribution in the School of Medicine and Public Health, I try to figure out ways of bringing synergies together between laboratories. So graduate students, postdocs, undergraduate students can all interact on a day-to-day basis. This is incredibly encouraging. You walk through our hallways and there's this level of excitement that's just tangible. Bringing more students into the fold of that is ultimately a key goal for everything that we're doing.
Other questions? Yes, Regent Miller.
First, I need to acknowledge Mr. Schnurr's father. I had the opportunity to be a student of his at UW Law School, and he was an outstanding professor, but also a tough questioner. So I still, and I shouldn't admit this, have wake up in cold sweats, fearing that I may not have read the case.
Me too sometimes.
Yeah. So I just want to focus on the biotech hub designation, which was awarded, as we mentioned, to 31 areas out of 100 of applications. And I need to really thank Senator Tammy Baldwin for voting for the CHIPS Act, which is what got us into this place. And also recognize WEDC Secretary Missy Hughes for putting together the coalition in our application, which helped us receive this designation. But now we're at the point where we're going to be competing for the big dollars. You said 10 slots. I thought it was 5, but it's $20 to $70 million, which is a big deal. And we talked about some of the opportunities we have to improve our application, but I'm wondering, I just want to make the point here, maybe there should be some centralized entity, whether it's in the University of Wisconsin system or UW-Madison takes the lead to sort of, because it is a state designation. Obviously, we have focus in Madison and Milwaukee, but what can we do to harness all of the other, stories at all of our other universities that are doing great work too? So I don't know if that's happening, but I just don't want to, obviously we have powerhouse research universities in Madison, Milwaukee, but we have 11 other schools doing, 11 other schools doing great work.
Yeah.
And I just don't know if that's being thought of or has been coordinated.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So yes, and even though it is Madison, Milwaukee focused, I use the example of, just with the few companies we have between like GE and Accuray, there's over 500 suppliers in the state of Wisconsin that support that, right? It's not like we make everything, plastics from Eau Claire, metal from Fox Valley, so there's a huge manufacturing component of this, which is quite honestly one of the reasons of why Wisconsin's competitive for the phase 2. So we need to leverage that better. So we are working with UW-Stout and working with some of the other UW systems, Milwaukee with the Connected Systems Institute. So, but yes, coordinating that better is something that I know I aspire to do better going forward. But if there's someone or some way that we can help to create that kind of structure, it would be very helpful. Yeah. Yeah.
Regent Watts.
One of my kids did his graduate studies at MIT, did his undergrad here in engineering, and I was struck by the cooperation between industry and MIT out there. And I'd like to ask, are there any administrative code or statutory roadblocks or tripwires that you're finding in Wisconsin that can be changed to facilitate more of this kind of cooperation? Are you finding any trouble that way? Or not?
I haven't found any, I think it's just more structural. Like I said, it's the same as in industry where you have to have, like, we're all competitive people. You have to have a shared mission, a shared goal to bring people together to fight and, win. And I think that's what we're lacking, quite honestly. I don't feel like, UW-Milwaukee and what they're doing with Connected Systems is at odds with what UW-Madison is doing or can do. Again, I think we don't have that structure to create what is their shared vision and who takes each piece of expertise, right? We can't have everyone doing everything either. And in some ways, every university does a little bit of everything, but are there those places of expertise that can take a lead? That type of a structure would be helpful, but I don't know any policy issues that I've come across where we can't be more collaborative.
Yeah, I would maybe make a quick comment. And I come from industry, nearly 30 years in industry, in businesses and running businesses, and now recently at UW-Madison to help out. I work with businesses every day at UW-Madison across all schools and colleges. I don't really see regulatory or policy as being, a top tier barrier. I think it's a lot of just the work that we must do and continue to better.
I'll just say, I think there are some barriers and, I don't have specific examples that I can point to at the moment, but I would love to follow up Regent Walks and provide a little bit more information.
I'd like to provide just two very specific thoughts. One is, and this is not like state state legislature or your state agency policy, but do you think around the country, one of the things that I hear from industry a lot when they're looking at kind of where they can work is just practically the ability, the speed and effectiveness of research being able to kind of get out quickly to be used and commercialized, and that there are just places that are kind of moving ahead in terms of the kind of speed of that. And that is, policy in the university system that I know you all have paid some attention to, but I hear that as a major thing from industry about where they want to collaborate. And so I think that's one thing I would say specifically here. And then the second thing I'd say at the state level, I'm sure there are some other specific policy issues in Wisconsin, but I would say when I see some of the places that are moving ahead the fastest, there is a, and this has been happening here, but a collaboration between the state and the partners, including the university system on this, where it's kind of hand in glove. Hey, let's look at the top economic sectors where there's going to be success. Then let's look at how the R&D and the work can align to those. And that's been happening some here, but I would say the state like Ohio, for example, as an example, and I'm looking from here and I want Wisconsin to win, but they created as an example, a dedicated funding source called Jobs Ohio, which is putting funding into supporting kind of economic development and collaboration between states and universities. I'm not saying that's exactly what's needed here. I think there's rising levels of state focus and collaboration. I think, in my view, we're always looking at how you can keep up in the game here.
And I will add one thing that would be helpful is if there are opportunities to lead to new businesses like spinoffs, that would be, we've worked with the School of Medicine Public Health for a while, and there's been opportunities to spin off businesses. This, as part of our tech hub, we think spin off new businesses because of this. So if those can be treated differently and maybe, to John's point, expedited faster, or, don't worry as much about the indirect overhead and all of like the structure that you guys have. Like if there's an opportunity to create a new business, is there a way to move it faster through the system and to invest maybe a little bit differently? So that's maybe an opportunity that we work great with the opportunities that we have on research, but to John's point, if we could do it faster, particularly when it's an economic program, not a research, right? We're not asking for clinical trials and all that, but this is clearly an opportunity to use something that's FDA approved and then turn it into a business opportunity, a brand new business. So that I think should be looked at differently, potentially from within the UW system.
I would just add one last bit in that we have to figure out really good ways of supporting our faculty who want to spin off or commercialize things that they've produced in their laboratories. And right now, there are challenges in sort of wearing two hats, a startup company hat and a faculty member hat, and figuring that out and best supporting those faculty members to encourage that activity. And I don't think that we do that well enough right now, but I think we can do that a whole lot better. This is going to spur new innovation, new entrepreneurship, and new partnerships. It's a lot easier to work with companies where they've been a member of our UW-Madison or another UW system school for a number of years. My own personal reflection, I have 2 research agreements with 2 companies. These were not easy to negotiate. There's intellectual property challenges that we have to address. We have to make sure, again, our faculty are supported in the best possible way, because it's a disincentive for us to be giving away their discoveries to industry. There is a good middle ground to be found. And I believe that we're going to be able to hit it. And it's organizations like this, when we're working together through the EDA, through the new tech hub, that we're going to find these wins.
Okay, Regent Bogus.
Bob. Yeah, I just want to, I guess, put a footnote or an asterisk on this whole conversation because I have heard over the years that there are more challenges to doing business, actually commercializing the intellectual property we have. And that the challenges seem to lie somewhere in the sort of the murky area, like what's a conflict of interest and what is constructive integration among cooperating parties. And I came away from conversations I've had with smaller business leaders that Wisconsin is perceived to be a bit more difficult place to do research, and the constraints on faculty participating in the commercialization of the research they do. Again, the kind of and this is not unique to the University of Wisconsin. Like when are we dealing with cooperating parties doing constructive integration from which they all benefit personally and we benefit institutionally and across the state? And what is a conflict of interest? That I've heard that over the years, and Charlie, you may have been making oblique reference to that. I'm not sure, but I think that's an issue that I always wanted to get us to just look at a little more squarely. The reputation is we're a little on the puritanical side of that.
So
that area.
comment I would make, and I thank you for that comment, Regent. You know, our institution is pretty risk averse. There is a lot of opportunity out there. And I think there's a way to balance risk so that we're doing things safely and appropriately and along the lines of policy, whether it's federal or state. But we have to let ourselves win a whole lot more than we currently do.
Be proud of winning.
Regent Bogus, did you have a question?
It was answered with commercialization.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? One comment I would have on the question about barriers. I worked for this university for 23 years, and sometimes it felt like we were rewarding people for the best, highest, thickest silo. That was a lot of times what was rewarded, and you had a group of people coming through, very talented researchers who had a hard time reaching across silos because it wasn't rewarded maybe sufficiently enough by their department. You know, these people are evaluated constantly for how they spend their time and how successful they are. So when we have people that are this talented that they can create new IP that industry is eager for, we have to also have a reward structure in our departments and our schools and colleges that will allow that to flow forward while we're educating all the students that we hope these companies will hire. Just a thought.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I think one of the reasons that I'm in my role currently is because I worked with engineering, School of Medicine, and CDIS, right? So it's sometimes if there's a way that you could create that structure across the colleges, even within Madison, I talked about across the campuses, but I'd also talk about some type of shared goal. Like if it's around biohealth, you've got AI at CDIS, you've got School of Medicine, which is doing great things. You've got engineering that has biomedical engineering. How do you create some shared vision with the companies in this area too? Because we have such strong healthcare companies here. How do you create a better structure for them to all win together? And so that's, I guess I would give you that as a challenge.
Thank you.
It's not easy.
John, were you going to say something?
I just wanted to comment on, again, the new CDIS building. This is an enormous opportunity where we have multiple schools and colleges that'll be living in this building, working together. And it's not about one school winning or another college winning. It's about how we can work collaboratively to do something more than the sum of the parts. And I'm super excited because for us, we're going to house our statistical department together with a statistics department from LNS, and our radiology department will be co-housed with the mathematics department. There's going to be so much new innovation that's created through this marriage. And this is what I would love to see continue. The Biotron is another opportunity, I think, that we have to create this nexus for schools and colleges to come together and do research in unison as opposed to the silos that you pointed out previously.
Right, and I don't know, I suspect there's a lot of people in this room who understand what an enormous sea change that was. But if you're casually listening to this, things haven't always worked this way in academia. And I think too, about our colleagues at the comprehensive campuses, many faculty of whom I've met, doing incredible research work down through the layers of their graduate students and undergraduate students. And, you know, I fear there are silos there too between them and the flagship, them and UWM. So I support Kumbaya reaching across those silos, and I wouldn't mind taking a sledgehammer to some of them. Regent Weatherly, did you have a question? I thought I saw your hand go. Oh, okay. Regent Tyler, did you have a question?
I do,
Yes, go ahead.
or maybe more of a comment. So there's two areas that come to mind for me. So you've mentioned in terms of building out this network, the companies that you've specifically mentioned are kind of mega companies, and you've referred, Wendy, you referred to the supply chain and some of those, and referred to entrepreneurship and the startup. But the majority of Wisconsin's manufacturing capacity is in those small to medium-sized companies that may not be in that current supply chain and maybe aren't in that entrepreneurial space. So, so one of my questions is, how do you reach into that, the majority of Wisconsin's manufacturing capacity, which is not in those areas you talked about? The other area that I'd like to just comment on is, you know, when you look at collaboration and building networks, competition is always a concern. You touched on many of those areas in terms of, you know, privacy and intellectual property and so on. But one of the areas I haven't heard about, and I serve on this board as a representative of the technical colleges, and in terms of research, certainly the university is the powerhouse in terms of research, but in terms of training, I suspect at some point in time, if this network blows out and we actually become a powerhouse for this sector, we're going to need additional resources for training. And I would hope at some point we're engaging with the technical colleges and their training capacity and their lab capabilities as well. So if there's anything anybody'd like to comment on those areas that.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's great. You could have been a plant for the great questions. First of all, for the small and medium manufacturers specifically, we do have quite a large amount of funds set aside to help them. A lot of times we have manufacturers that have a hard time getting into the biohealth space because of quality, regulatory, you know, just becoming a supplier into a larger manufacturer is very difficult to meet the quality requirements there. So there are programs specifically for small and medium manufacturers, either to get them into the biohealth manufacturing space if they're not there already, or to help them grow. John had a couple of suggestions around, you know, kind of radiopharmaceuticals, but there's also just metals, plastics, things like that, that they can grow into the biohealth space, but it's not easy because you have to meet a lot of requirements. So that's one thing. I would also say that one of our projects specifically is led by the technical colleges, Madison College and MATC in Milwaukee. And that's specifically around jobs like CNC programmers, lab techs. There's actually, that's one of our highest gaps for jobs in the state of Wisconsin, is in that, in those types of jobs. So we do have them. We do have funds going to Madison College as well as MATC to fund curriculum around those areas. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Just to build on that, the shift that I think of the tech hub focus on just that project is really significant. What Wendy just shared.
Yeah.
And this was not the original. This is a great example of learning, iterating. And so you're looking at this and figuring, okay, let's actually take these technical colleges and make sure they are focused on the workforce. Now that if there's a win, they'll get significant resources to be able to have technical colleges do the work. But to me, it's a great example of desiloing, because it's all right. The university system, the technical colleges are collaborating on a project together, per your good question. So I think this has been a great move on the part of the Tech Hub Consortium on that front.
Okay, other questions or comments from Regents? All right, seeing none, folks, we really appreciate you coming forward with this topic. We look forward to hearing more about your work in the future. Thank you so much. And we're going to take a short break. We'll see you back here at 10:15, please. All right, we talked a bit this morning about students and student research. I want to make another pitch for research in the Rotunda next month. I think it's the 6th of March, is that correct? Yes, 6th of March. So for more of that, please do come down to the Capitol. Right now, we're going to have a great presentation from one of our very talented students, and I'm going to turn the floor over to Lori Reeser from UW-Madison to introduce this student.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Lori Reeser, Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, and it's my pleasure to be able to introduce our speaker to you today. I love my job, and I really believe I have one of the best jobs on campus because of students like Amanpreet Sehra is a first-generation Punjabi American studying finance and real estate in her 3rd year at UW-Madison. She is captain of Wisconsin's School of Bhangra, which is UW's folk Punjabi dance team. Aman also co-leads the nonprofit Sikh Teens, which she'll tell you a little bit more about. Aman became an interfaith fellow with UW Center for Interfaith Dialogue this past year, and I had the opportunity to meet her and other fellows last fall. The Interfaith Fellows are a team of passionate community organizers proud of their diverse faith practices, eager to learn and to build bridges with others. Our center director, Dr. Yolich Rosenhagen, said Aman stands out as an intellectually creative person who champions diversity and difference. In conversations with others, he said she artfully balances the complexities of interfaith identities by focusing on shared values. Aman is known at the center for her unparalleled ability to talk with others whose viewpoints are different than her own. She listens before she speaks. She communicates gracefully. She regularly practices humility and tolerance in an ever more difficult environment. She is truly the product of a successful educational experience, which happens both inside and outside the classroom. Here to share her UW-Madison story with you, her love for the School of Business, her cultural heritage, and building community, I'm proud to welcome Amanpreet Sehra.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me here today to share my story. My path to UW-Madison begins with the Wisconsin public school system. Although I was born in California, the only place I remember growing up is Wisconsin. I went to elementary school in Brookfield and graduated from Franklin High School near Milwaukee. Watching my parents navigate their own business growing up, it inspired my interest in business, and naturally, the Wisconsin School of Business was the place I wanted to go to get the education I wanted and stay close to home. So the decision to apply to Madison was easy in that sense, but I just had one hiccup: reliving my childhood experience. Growing up in a predominantly white area, it taught me about keeping parts of my identity hidden. While I never directly experienced any racism, I always felt like I didn't quite fit in because of my skin color. It felt like people only saw me for the color of my skin and made assumptions about who I was as a person. If my culture or religion, Sikhi, was ever brought up in class, it was questions like, in India, do they have blank? Do you have to get an arranged marriage? What is in that kid's hair wrap? Now, looking back at these questions, I can tell that these speak more to my own classmates' ignorance, but as a girl in high school, I had just wished somebody would ask me about our pretty clothing or something. My religion crashed into the spotlight in the summer of 2012 when a white supremacist walked into the Oak Creek Gurdwara, a place where the Sikh community worships, and shot 6 civilians. I had known for a long time that the first victim of a hate crime after 9/11 was a Sikh man wearing a turban Yet that felt distant. The Oak Creek Gordota is a 10-minute drive from my house. And at the time that we got the call to turn on the news, my family and I were getting ready to go to the Brookfield Gordota, a neighboring Gordota. I knew I was safe, but the victims could have so easily been my parents or my uncle, a turbaned man himself. I realized the only way to move forward was to find support in the Sikh community that I had and to educate others about what it truly meant to be a Sikh. I was a junior in high school when the COVID lockdowns were announced in March of 2020. The first two thoughts I had were, one, what was the point of me even making the varsity lacrosse team the day before? And two, no more Camp Sikh Versa. This camp is held twice a year with the purpose of connecting Sikhs with each other and inspiring them to learn from each other at a young age. With the world shutting down, my camp friends and I, being teenagers, had a lot of questions, and the answers that we were getting were not adequate. This inspired us to start Sikh Teens, a nonprofit organization aimed at, with the purpose of connecting Sikhs through storytelling. The success of the group taught me that I could build the community I wanted by my own efforts instead of trying to fit in. I'd shared this experience in my college applications and was thrilled when UW-Madison affirmed that they agreed. I couldn't wait to get started. Now, as a junior reflecting back on my time here at Madison, my involvement with the Wisconsin School of Business, the South Asian community, and the Center for Interfaith Dialogue have been central to my growth here. The first class I ever attended here at Madison was Gen Biz 100. It was my first experience in the business school, and since then, I have been one of the biggest fans. The professors, the clubs, the finance lab, the multicultural center, in my opinion, make it the best school at this institution. The finance major in me got to achieve her investment banking dreams through its extensive network of alumni, the Investment Banking Club, and the school's partnership with the Access Distributed Fellowship. I've learned over the years that this community of Badgers is one of the most supportive and will do anything to help you accomplish your goals. On the other hand, I have also met so many other students just like me in the South Asian community here. Being a part of the Sikh Student Association and the Wisconsin School of Bhangra, it truly feels like my culture is being appreciated here. Around campus, people know of who Sikh students are who wear their turbans proudly. And Dean of Students, Christina Olsterd, made us feel seen and appreciated on campus by talking to us about our experiences, about what it meant to be a Sikh student here at Madison during their Badger Dialogue sessions. UW School of Bhangra is recognized for our colorful uniforms and bold dancing. Kids in my class even know about our team without me having to explain anything to them. Finally, the Center for Interfaith Dialogue has allowed me to celebrate our different religious identities. When Ulrich Rosenhagen, director of the center, asked me to be a fellow, I was ecstatic because I wanted to be able to connect with others about a topic that I feel like we do not talk about enough. Our focus this semester was on trying to focus on establishing a foundation of what this center's position on campus would be. But soon we realized our focus would be on understanding how we stayed connected through trauma and grief. This semester, the spotlight was on Palestine and Israel. While I haven't personally been affected by the war, my roommate is Muslim. My classmates are Jewish and Muslim, and our entire Madison community has felt the weight of these events. Many of us were struggling with how to continue on in our daily lives, while on our social media feeds, we were seeing stories and images of what was happening on the ground. It was during these times that we realized, as a center, we must come together in support of each other and be open to conversation and connection, especially during a time of need. As a campus community that has been in the middle of many different political movements, we all have responsibility towards the actions of our institution. If there is anything that I have learned over the past 3 years, it is that this is the definition of community. We all have our own personal unique identities, but above all, are members of our community. We have a responsibility to not only think of ourselves, but to understand our neighbors and to consider how our actions and decisions affect them as well. Whether advocating for change or fostering empathy, our actions ripple through the fabric of our community, shaping the experiences of those around us. As we navigate the complexities of our identities and the world at large, let us continue to uphold the values of unity, understanding, and compassion. In conclusion, my journey here at UW-Madison has been marked by growth, resilience, and a deep sense of community. As I look ahead, I am filled with gratitude for the connections and opportunities that have enriched my college experience. Together, let us strive to build more bridges, celebrate diversity, and a more inclusive future. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to my story here at Madison, and I hope for future Badgers, they get to share the same deep sense of community that I have experienced here. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanpreet. And I wonder if you wouldn't mind taking a question or two from
Yeah, of
board
course.
members. All right, anyone? I think the finance community is going to be very lucky to have you. You
Thank
are the
you.
whole package. Definitely. Anybody? All right. Yes, Regent Underly.
I just wanted to say thank you for what you shared with us, but also just also sharing your love for Wisconsin's public schools too, and how they made you into what you are today. And you're just a shining example of all that's really good. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Yes, Regent Weatherly.
You talked about your parents' small business having an influence on your aspirations, where you've ended up here, in the business school. Any ideas on how we can introduce entrepreneurship to more students? So you had the good fortune of seeing your parents up close and personal, but for students that don't have that opportunity, or for the peers that you see, any ideas for us?
Yeah, definitely. I think this year, I'm not too sure about the program and who it's led by, but I know at the business school, there's a lot more efforts for entrepreneurship and promoting that especially. I know we get a lot of different emails about events held with alumni who have started their own businesses, how they have started it themselves. And there's also different events and conferences that we get to go to that allow us to meet other students who have dreams of starting their own business or want to get involved. And it's a way where we can really connect. It actually happened this past Monday. And it's a way that you can just learn about others, learn about what they want to do. If you want to be a part of a team, you can go and connect with people who you like their ideas that they have. So I think currently the business school is doing a really good job of trying to promote that. And I think in the future, if we just focus, if there's some focus or ways to grant money towards ideas, especially, I think that's going to be really the way that's going to push the startup community there. But I think right now they're off to a great start.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, thank you again for your time and your great presentation.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
And it's now time for one of our most enjoyable responsibilities as a board, and that is the presentation of Regent Awards. Today, we represent the 16th Annual Regent Diversity Awards, where we recognize outstanding faculty, staff, and programs from 3 of our universities. We honor these recipients for the support and opportunities they offer our students. To lead us in the awards presentation, I will turn the floor over to the chair of the awards selection committee, Regent Hector Colon.
Thank you, Regent President Walsh. Appreciate the opportunity to share a few words here today. Good morning. On behalf of my colleagues, I offer a special welcome to this year's awards recipients. We also welcome their families, friends, and colleagues who have joined us here this morning in person and virtually. Welcome all. This is the 16th year that the Board of Regents has presented its diversity awards, which are meant to recognize the outstanding contributions to diversity and inclusion by people and programs at our UW universities. These are ideals that we have promoted for decades. Today's awards are a part of a special family of awards that we as Regents sponsor. They also include the Regents Teaching Excellence Awards, the Regents Academic Staff Excellence Awards, and the Regent University Staff Excellence Award. These awards recognize exceptional service. The Regents Awards Program, which we present here this morning, was established through a board directive calling for formal recognition of individuals, teams, or units within the universities of Wisconsin who have successfully fostered greater success for historically underrepresented populations. I would be remiss if I didn't reiterate the board's commitment, as well as the president's commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion. This is an opportunity for us to reimagine how we do equity, diversity, inclusion. And maybe we've taken a technical approach to equity, diversity, inclusion through the use of assessments, changing policies, or requiring training. Could we shift our focus to getting to know one another, to learning from one another, from being willing to walk in each other's shoes and demonstrating empathy, love, and care, and even disagree with one another, and ultimately developing profound friendships with one another. I am truly hopeful and optimistic about how we move forward with this in the future. At this time, I would like to recognize the commitment of my Regent colleagues who have served on the selection committee for this year's awards, and they include Regent Evan Brankas and Regent Ashok Rai, and also Regent Joan Prince. I appreciate the work of those who supported the committee. I also want to thank all the nominees for their important contributions and taking the time to submit materials. Before we present this year's award winners, I would like to acknowledge the other nominees by reading their names and institutions. Dr. Sylvain M. Unthirst, Dr. Udel Lorenzo, Dr. Patricia Tejez Hiron, Dr. David Pate, Dr. Lynn Gert, and Pamela Nowak. Program nominees included UW-La Crosse's Art Department, UW-Madison's People Program, UW-Milwaukee Roberto Hernandez Center, UW-Platteville Office of Multicultural Student Affairs, and UW River Falls Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning, and UW-Stout's Multicultural Student Services. Along with these impressive pool of nominees, we are pleased to recognize the accomplishments of this year's recipients, and we are proud that they are a part of the UW-Wisconsin family. Before we present these awards, I'd like to point out that the profiles of our award winners are available online. I encourage you to read them at your leisure. I am sure that you will be impressed. Truly, all of them are deserving of recognition and appreciation. My colleagues on the Regents Selection Committee will each introduce one award and present the award. Each recipient will then have an opportunity to make brief remarks. I will present the first award. It is my privilege to present the first Board of Regents Diversity Award in the individual category to Dr. Christine Smith of UW Green Bay. Dr. Smith is a professor of psychology with the Department of Psychology and Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies program. Dr. Smith has served UW Green Bay since 2008 in capacities positively impacting equity and diversity. These include co-founding the Pride Center, coordinating Women's History Month events, overseeing the creation of the LGBT certificate, and chairing Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies program. In the fall of 2020, Dr. Smith co-created the program BIPOC Rise, Black and Indigenous People of Color Reaching Intersectional Strength Through Engagement. This peer mentoring program was created to provide Black, Indigenous, Latinos, Asians, and multicultural students with academic, emotional, and professional support. Renamed Scholars Rising, the program recently expanded to include first-generation students who make up about 50% of UW Green Bay's undergraduate student body. In 2020, Dr. Smith facilitated and implemented a well-received installation of the American Psychology Association's I Am Psyched National Tour. This exhibit and surrounding program explored the history and contemporary contributions of women of color in psychology. Dr. Smith has mentioned students in over 70 high-impact independent learning experiences. These include internships, research assistantships, independent studies, teaching assistantships, and honor projects. Many of these research students have gone on to present at regional and national conferences. The chair of the psychology department describes our awardee this way. Dr. Smith is an inspiring and passionate teacher. Her courses are rigorous, eye-opening, and enriching to students' lives. Dr. Smith is an unceasing advocate and an inspirational mentor to BIPOC and marginalized members of our community and beyond, unquote. It is my pleasure to present our first Regents Award, Diversity Award, to Dr. Christine Smith.
Thank you. I can't hear the clap, so I'll assume. Do I have a minute to say?
Absolutely. Please go ahead, Dr. Smith.
Well, greetings from San Diego, where the temperature is the same as it is in Wisconsin. And I'm actually here with 4 undergraduate students who are presenting original research at a national conference. And so I love the discussion about students in doing research, and we do lots of it at the comprehensives. You know, I founded BIPOC Rise with a student because we were actually working on the program that I Am Psyched, and I was working with students of color, and we were looking at ways to retain students of color because I'm a data geek and I'm a social psychologist by training, and we're heavily quantitative, and I know the numbers aren't good in retention. And we my student actually found a program where upper level students mentor first year students of color and said, I wish I had something like that when I was in my first year. And to which I said, oh no, am I gonna have to do this? Yes, we did. And so I founded this program with students. And so we're now including first gen students. And this semester we have 22 mentees, 11 mentors, and our retention rate is much higher than the retention rate of first year students in general at UW-GB. And so I just want to say, when we're looking at equity, you're looking at diversity, equity, inclusion, to add the B, the belonging, because that is the most important aspect of all of this. As a social psychologist, I know that everyone wants to belong. We're social beings. And if we can increase a sense of belonging for our students, whether it's at a pride center, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's having events for them, whether it's having a mentor who has their back. Our students, especially at UW-GB, where they're primarily first generation students, they'll thrive if they're given the opportunity. And so I hope all of us will do what Horace Mann actually said, which is be ashamed to die until you've won some victory for humanity. Thanks.
Thank you. And as a first gen college graduate, I especially thank you on behalf of all of our first gen students.
I'm first gen as well.
Thank you. And Regent Y will present the next award.
Morning. Our second Regents Diversity Award in the individual category goes to UW-Stout Provost Glendalí Rodríguez. Provost Rodríguez has actively contributed to equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts during her more than 18 years at UW-Stout in positions ranging from all levels of professorship to department chair of construction to associate provost to provost. She served as secretary and treasurer of the Minority Faculty and Staff Network and created its mentorship network to help new faculty and staff connect with the university and local community and advance along their professional trajectory. This network, known as the Underrepresented Faculty and Staff Alliance, is still active on campus. Provost Rodríguez also worked with students to help reestablish the UW-Stout chapter of Latinos Unidos and served as their faculty advisor for 2 years. The chapter has grown to be one of the largest and most active student organizations at UW-Stout. Provost Rodríguez led the inaugural comprehensive academic planning process for academic affairs. The resulting detailed 5-year academic plan aligned academic programming with the needs of all students, including full-time, part-time, and underrepresented. Her work on this plan was recognized by her peers in the American Association of the State of Colleges and Universities Student Success Institute, which presented her with the Fellows' Choice Award in July of 2023. In the nomination materials, Chancellor Frank offered this reflection on the impact of our awardees' work. As a bilingual woman of color in a discipline and industry comprised predominantly of white men, Glendalí has persevered and has not only succeeded, but triumphed as a leader, change agent, and model for others to follow. On that note, it is my pleasure to present the second Regents Diversity Award to Provost Glendalí Rodríguez at UW-Stout.
Wow, well, good morning. I'd like to start by thanking everyone that made this award possible, including the Board of Regents and all of my colleagues that submitted and supported my nomination materials. And I too want to recognize the important contributions of all the other nominees this year and in years past. Thank you for your commitment to sustain a positive impact in our diverse communities at a particularly challenging time within the universities of Wisconsin, the state, and the globe. Side note to my script, just wanted to thank Regent Medideeds for his words yesterday, as well as the session with Associate Vice President Monica Smith. Thank you. So it's not often that I get to have a group's attention for my own personal recognition, so I struggled on what to say. In my nomination materials, examples were highlighted regarding my leadership work over the past 18 years, challenges that I have overcome as a minority, and my authentic leadership style that has developed as a result. Yet there's so many others doing work to support ED, I, and B across the system, and I recognize that I have benefited from many privileges, so I am humbled. So today, I'll share a little bit more about my journey and how I approach leading. As Wisconsin's Polytechnic University, we pride ourselves in hiring faculty and staff with industry experience coupled with academic credentials. I was one of them. When I first started at Stout, I had 5 years of experience working in the architecture, city planning, and construction industry. I'm a licensed architect, and I hold a professional terminal degree. I was hired at Stout as an assistant professor of construction. I was in the minority starting on day one. The only female and Latina, Boricua faculty in the construction program. The only, right. The only female faculty with that particular professional terminal degree. A teacher of primarily white male identifying students. And from day one, I got challenging questions about my credibility. Yet I persisted because I've been in the minority since my childhood. My formative years were spent moving every 2 to 3 years and living in primarily white small towns in the southern part of the United States. And here's the catch, it was balanced with summers, middle school, and 1 semester of high school on the beautiful island of Puerto Rico. That's where I could easily blend in with the majority and learn about my family's culture. So from a very early age, I learned that differences exist and that it's not something that I could fear or resist. Even though I was often in the minority, I was always surrounded by a family support structure that made me feel valued and strong. Instead of shying away due to being different, I developed an innate interest in fostering community while being true to myself. Perhaps this was due to moving around so much. Perhaps it was because I was a middle child, but I was seeking connections. However, this yearning for connection then translated into an interest in learning about the physical environments that impact our sense of well-being. I think that drew me to studying architecture and ultimately to become a licensed architect. When it comes to architectural work, I approach each project with the goal of first researching and understanding the end users that will be impacted by that design, and then working steadfast to make sure it's as successful as possible. Design work is never done, and guess what? It never pleases everyone. Receiving criticism, either directly or indirectly, regarding a design happens frequently, and you must work through it. Little did I know how strong this aligns with being a leader, especially in these times of such polarization. When I shifted into the higher education realm, I approached each course I was to teach, each committee I was going to serve on, each student that I advised in the same manner. Okay, work to understand how I can help reach that ultimate goal for the betterment of that person or our institution as a collective. The work is complex, the results won't please everyone, yet education has long-lasting positive impacts on the future. So started at Stout in 2005. I had no idea about the inner workings of a university or the status quo hierarchies that I would disrupt. Pretty much started on day one. Here's an example. My first day at Stout at a social event sponsored via our new instructor workshop. I was standing with the group of new instructors and over walks Emeritus Chancellor Chuck Sorensen. I saw my fellow colleagues kind of get tripped up on what to say. The conversation practically stopped. And I was just intuitively and immediately going into inclusion mode. I wanted to make this person feel like part of the group. So I asked him what classes he'd be teaching. Yes, I mistook him as a new instructor, and I should have done more homework regarding the executive leaders at the organization that I was joining, but I was focused on how to be a great teacher for the students that I would soon be meeting, because student success is the priority. So after my question and an awkward silence, Emeritus Chancellor Sorensen gave me this huge smile, and he proceeded to talk to me about his passion for history. We chatted for almost 5 minutes. No one else was talking. And then he moved on to talk to the next group of faculty. And at that point, the people around me said, "Don't you know who that was?" And they told me what his title. Then I asked, well, what does a chancellor do? And then they told me a little bit more, and I thought, ay caramba. So needless to say, it was a memorable introduction. And from that point forward, I was on a first name basis with Chuck as chancellor, and I would have never guessed that I would become an executive leader at our university. Through design thinking and fostering of community, my leadership style is not one of hierarchy, but one of approachability and relatability. As provost, I continue like my day one. I go to attend new instructor workshops, new employee onboarding sessions, trying to make sure everyone feels welcomed in any role on our campus, because everyone at a university is an educator, and we all play a role in supporting student success. Along the way, I've learned the ins and outs of higher education. I've worked tirelessly to understand the infrastructure that drives our processes, tried to address inequities that are deeply, deeply embedded in higher educational structures, and work to support the people that help us reach institutional success. Along the way, I've become a role model for others, and that's humbling. I mentor students from diverse backgrounds, new faculty or employees. I help colleagues understand their strengths so that they can advance in their paths. Add my background in architecture, I bring creative thinking to every task and keep focused on possibilities amidst challenges and change. So when I'm a part of something, I start with trying to articulate the ultimate desired outcome for any project with those that will be impacted, and then work towards that. At a time when we are so polarized, I do my best to explain how I reach decisions. Those decisions are becoming ever more complex for public higher education. We're at a point where it takes time and it takes trust to explain all the aspects that are taken into consideration, and we do lose people in the process. What's front of mind for me right now as I continue to lead is the topic of persistence. So I looked up a definition of persistence, the quality that allows someone to continue doing something or trying something, even though it is difficult or it's opposed by other people. It takes persistence to champion ED-IB in public higher education. I've persisted in my various capacities from faculty to advisor to administrator, but I have not done it alone. I've had mentors and ally networks each step of the way, and I remain extremely grateful for that. I could not be here today and recognized as a leader if it weren't for my family. I've been privileged to have close and healthy relationships with 2 sets of parents, my spouse, 2 children, and a very long list of friends and family and provosts. I have this amazing, and sometimes people might call it irritating, talent of being able to call things out that don't seem right, often in that very moment, and ask difficult questions respectfully. Yet I'm in the education sector because at my core, I believe that that I have benefited from how education opens opportunities, regardless of the politics. I work with many others to support the success of students and employees holistically and equitably, and it is often very difficult and thankless work. So I'll close today by saying gracias, thank you for this recognition, extend my sincerest congratulations to everyone that's being recognized today. And for those of you leading this work, just know you're not alone. Thank you for your persistence. Thanks.
Back again. I'm honored to present the 3rd Regents Diversity Award in the program category to the Campus Garden Program at UW-Whitewater. Led by UW-Whitewater Sustainability Coordinator, Wes Enterline, this program has brought together students, staff, faculty, and community members to support individuals and families of the UW-Whitewater campus and surrounding community for more than a decade. The program's primary mission is to provide fresh produce to local food pantries, serving a diverse local population. By addressing food insecurity, the program contributes to the well-being of underrepresented populations, first-generation students, and economically disadvantaged individuals on campus and in the local community. The ongoing donations, totaling over 25,000 pounds of produce to date and more than 2,500 pounds in 2023 alone, demonstrate the sustainability of the program's impact. Notably, the Campus Garden program was integrated into a UW-Whitewater service learning class. The participants were predominantly underrepresented or first-generation students. They learned the impact of sustainability principles like composting food waste, propagating and saving seeds, and organic gardening techniques. In the nomination materials, Vice Chancellor Brenda Jones commented about the program, saying, "Food insecurity is a reality that often impacts the health and well-being of underrepresented populations and economically disadvantaged individuals. The Campus Garden program is changing and improving those lives daily by giving children and adults the knowledge and tools to combat this reality. Please join me in congratulating the UW-Whitewater Campus Garden Program and help me welcome Sustainability Coordinator Wes Enterline, who will accept the award on the program's behalf.
Yeah, you might have.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, everyone. I'm getting used to my new pair of bifocals here, so we'll see how this goes. Hello, and thank you for inviting me to speak to you this morning. It's an honor to receive this recognition from the Board of Regents. This governing board is made up of volunteers inspired by great service that I really admire and respect. And speaking as a shared governance leader, I do not envy the tough decisions you face and appreciate your leadership during these particularly challenging times. Investing in student success by providing an adequate safety net for their basic practical needs is an essential feature of closing the achievement gap. I also believe it's part of our responsibility as a university and as a sustainability practice of the utmost importance. I must say the trope of a poor college student living on ramen must be taken seriously. Students are investing thousands of dollars and are often incurring financial risk through debt to take a chance on the promise of an education leading to a more prosperous future. We are responsible for guiding and helping them fulfill that promise and get their ROI. Paying for a higher education is a significant life decision for anyone to make, but a student without adequate support system for their basic needs are also taking a more significant risk. A lack of income to obtain nutritious food isn't something we should take lightly if we want all students to succeed. I've talked to students navigating social reality that is starkly different from their hometown if they are coming from an underrepresented population. My own student experience at UW-Whitewater, trying to navigate a new reality that my parents never lived through, is pretty typical for a first-generation student. We are investing a larger percentage of our resources into this education if we are economically disadvantaged, often at a higher overall cost through borrowed money. The margin for error for these students is smaller, and if a student experiences hardships like food insecurity, their focus on the long-term goal shrinks away, and the urgent short-term need dominates their attention. The higher risk of experiencing food insecurity puts these students at a disadvantage, and all too often is these practical hardships that force hard decisions, and the achievement gap will grow. Paradoxically, the poor college student is often assumed to have someone back home supporting them. Or it's assumed if they can afford to pay for school, they must surely be able to afford to pay for food. Maybe they don't look poor or hungry according to their physical appearance. These students begin to believe that these resources are not meant for them, and there's someone else that needs it more and they don't qualify. This lack of money can elicit shame and disappointment. So many students silently drop out, feeling defeated by circumstances outside their control or even validated that this experience just wasn't meant for them. We can help them meet their basic needs, and we can help clear the most obvious obstacles on the road to success. This leads me to another essential feature to close the achievement gap. Inclusivity, to me, means that every student on our campus has access to the same opportunities for growth and development. That's what they're paying for. In order to access this higher need, obtaining an education we should also concern ourselves with how students access a lot more basic human needs. Of course, all of our universities in Wisconsin do this work through various support programs, and I'm just glad to do my part. For me, this philosophy extends beyond just providing resources like food. It means giving them access to spaces and experiences like gardens they thought were not for them, and teaching them how to grow their own food. It means working to dismantle stigmas that only poor people can visit a food pantry and normalize their use. It means making sure we provide quality food in our donations because everyone should have access to meeting that basic need very well. Inclusion to me is a form of love. It's best perceived and practiced as a verb, not a noun. It is not an end goal, but an ongoing process. We express this love to our local community through the ministry of the Whitewater Community Food Pantry. It gives our students an opportunity to understand the spirit of abundance that inspires charity and develops our civic engagement. Serving others is a basic principle of being human, and many who once relied on a resource are inspired to give back when they are able. Including students in the giving process nurtures this spirit and can plant the seed for future generosity. I tried to work in some garden puns. So plant the seed. The service our interns provide through these efforts instills a sense of purpose and meaning that's essential for career fulfillment. It's true, I've led this project now going into our 12th growing season, and I'm very fortunate to do this as part of my job. I'm proud of what we accomplished because this is truly a program award. I could have just as easily spent my 5 minutes here just reading the names one after another of the people that have contributed to this program. I was unwilling to start a campus garden the first several times I was approached because it requires many hands to show up and do the literal dirty work. It took a football coach named Tom to inspire me to take the leap, and an advisor named Kara to help me get through the first years and build this for the future students on our campus. I'm deeply thankful for the cohorts of interns who faithfully follow me around our garden and greenhouse as I do my favorite kind of gardening, point and criticize. So many student volunteers have come out to help with such loyalty that a new student organization germinated, garden pun, and has flourished working in the garden and greenhouse. I'm appreciative of the many staff and community members who worked with me. Many of them poured themselves into this project for just a season or two, but always showed up for very little or no compensation or recognition. I appreciate Roberta. She's the dining hall employee who doesn't work summers, but still spends her free time with our students in the garden, in the hot sun, weeding beds. This project actively builds community among all ages and backgrounds and is deeply fulfilling. This campus garden program is its own social ecosystem with all its diversity of people it takes to be healthy and functional. I'm the only professional staff member in our sustainability office, so most of all, the campus garden is truly a project by students and for everyone. And that is the part I am most proud of. Thank you.
All right, thank you, and congratulations again to our award winners, and the nominees, and we plow forward. Sorry. That's enough of that. Thank you again to Chancellor Mnookin, who unfortunately had to catch a plane and isn't here to hear these magical words of praise to her team and her staff, who always make this meeting in Madison extraordinarily productive, and we're very grateful for your hosting. And I'd like to call on our esteemed colleague from Green Bay, Regent Atwell, to read the statement of thanks. You can do it wherever you'd like, Bob. Just make sure you read a row before you start.
Make sure I what?
Read a row.
Oh, I do a lot of that.
Good.
Whereas the members of the Board of Regents are pleased to recognize the University of Wisconsin-Madison as the official host campus for the board's February 2024 meeting, and are grateful for the generous hospitality extended this month by Chancellor Jennifer Mnookin and the entire Badger community. And whereas the board appreciated hearing Chancellor Mnookin's thoughtful presentation about how UW-Madison is focusing on innovation for the public good, a bedrock value and launch pad to the future. And Whereas the Business and Finance Committee heard from Vice Chancellor for Finance Administration Rob Kramer and Associate Vice Chancellor David Murphy about ways UW-Madison is investing in innovation for the public good and its success in generating additional revenues to invest in its mission. And whereas the Capital Planning and Budget Committee gained a deeper understanding of how UW-Madison is making progress through challenges to transform the built environment. And whereas the Education Committee learned about the opportunities and the impact of UW-Madison undergraduate research, which allows students to work directly with faculty to advance scientific understanding, contribute to scholarship in an array of fields, and addresses real-world challenges. And whereas the board appreciated hearing the panel presentation, Strategic Alliances Maximizing Federal Funding Opportunities through Public-Private Partnerships, such as the recent CHIPS and Science Act, which authorized $10 billion to invest in regional innovation and technology hubs across the country, including UW-Madison. And whereas the board was delighted to hear from UW-Madison student Amanpreet Sehra, an undergraduate junior majoring in finance and real estate with a certificate in religious studies. And whereas the board was inspired by the reception held at the Chazen Museum of Art with its beautiful and illuminating glassworks exhibit. Be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents hereby thanks UW-Madison for this month's informative presentations, its forward-thinking spirit, and its many continued contributions to the Universities of Wisconsin and the state as a whole.
Thank you very much. And thanks again to the Badger team. Before we adjourn, are there any regents who have communications, petitions, or memorials to share? All right, seeing none, hope to see a lot of you at Research in the Rotunda. Otherwise, we'll see you in April at Platteville. We're adjourned.